Tonight, we have Corey McNabb from Hockey Canada with us, and I got to know Corey about 5-6 years ago, and has always been an awesome resource to me and helpful in my coach education and stuff that I'd like to do. Corey's the director of development programs for Hockey Canada, so a lot of the Drill Hub and the Network app are all kind of his baby and his project that he's put a lot of time into. And I think that the best part about Corey is that he's coached at the highest of levels, so a lot of NHL players, but he also spends time coaching some young ones as well too, and there's a lot of emphasis and importance on those younger ages and building the fundamentals. So I think tonight's presentation will have a lot to do and relate with everybody at every particular level, and really relevant topic that we've had a lot of questions and comments on. So we'll just introduce Corey, and I'll let him take the reins from here. And thank you again for coming and for joining us today.
All right, thanks, Joel. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for spending an hour with us here tonight. As Joel mentioned, I've been lucky in my career with Hockey Canada to be able to work with a lot of players from different levels. From NHL guys all the way down to 7 and 8, 9, 10-year-olds all the way through. And currently I work with University of Calgary Dinos men's team, doing skills with them, and I coach a U11 team in the wintertime too. So I've always felt it's important to be involved in the game at various different levels. And it's interesting, sometimes we're doing the exact same thing with university players who are, sometimes still going on to pro and coming out of major junior, but also working with, the 10 or 11-year-olds and working on the exact same thing. Sometimes it's just you're at a progression, or you have a different focus on the drill. But at the end of the day, a lot of it really comes into play. And probably the biggest thing that I'm a big believer in is how skills and practices tie into game application. And to me, that's the most important thing for development is working on things in practice that you're going to see happen in a game. And whether it's a simple skill or a complex skill or a series of skills, to me, it all comes down to that element. And so the majority of stuff that we work on right now is game application. Obviously, there's going to be times when you're working on skills for repetition, and you might have 2 pucks, or you're shooting multiple pucks in the same thing where it doesn't really apply to a game, but there's a purpose to the repetition of it. But other than that, everything that we like to do from a Hockey Canada standpoint and that we work on with a lot of our players is all game application. And how can you get the player from being able to do it in practice into a game? And that's not obviously going to happen quickly for some players. Sometimes it takes a long time. But I think if you follow the process and we have an understanding of what we're trying to do and know what we want to see, over time you will start to see players do things in games that you've worked on in practice. And to me, that's where the success is. A lot of times, we see highlights of players, whether it's NHL guys or whatever, and they make these phenomenal plays. And the reality of it is it's taken them a long time to get to that point where they're that good and they can do it. And sometimes there's multiple components of skills in those plays that have to happen in order for the ultimate goal or the scoring chance to happen. So that's what we're going to kind of go through today a little bit is sort of how we define progressions, skill blends, skill continuums, and chain of events. So if you have any questions, obviously type them into the chat line there, and Joel can monitor those. I do have a lot of video in this, and I will make sure that this presentation is available for everybody, so you can get all the video if you want afterwards. But again, it's meant to give you some ideas on how we sort of look at player development and skill development from Hockey Canada side. And just to make sure that the video plays a little better, I'll just turn the video off on my screen as I'm talking here, just so it sometimes it streams a little better without it. So. The first thing I want to touch on sort of quickly is a progression, and I think a lot of people have an understanding of a progression, but typically a progression is going to be the same drill setup. Maybe it starts with skating, then you add a puck, then you add a pass, you might add additional players, and then you might want to add stress or pressure. So to me, especially with young kids, the progression is key. And don't move too far along in that progression until they have reasonable ability to perform the skating skill. Once they do those things really well, then you can add a puck, then you can add a pass, then additional players. And the key thing about this is progression and regression is no matter what level you're coaching at, you can start with a drill. You can determine how well your players do it, and then you can make it more difficult or you can make it easy. So just to show you a clip here of what we call a progression. This is one we call 4 pylon agility. Don't have to coach in some of these drills. You're just setting up the situation. Saying, I just want you to move your feet, move your hands, be creative. Don't do the same thing twice. If you fall down or lose the puck, perfect. The progression is the same drill. Now we add 2 players. And you might want to add some rules saying, don't try to avoid each other all the time. Go at each other. So it's a way for players to learn how to handle the puck in traffic. They have to keep their head up. Obviously, with young players or when you're working on skill, sometimes their head's going to be down, and that's okay. But we still want to focus on their eyes, scanning the ice, seeing where that pylon is, understanding where they're going to move. Then you have 2 players with a pass, and again, puck support. So you can start adding some more difficult concepts to it where they always have to face the passer. Communication, whether it's verbal or whether it's just eyes or tap a stick on the ice, different things like that. So this is sort of where we would consider progressions. We haven't done anything with the pylons. We haven't done anything other than position where the players are, or add the players. So to me, this is a progression. And you can get to, example, a position on a half wall where a player might start some basic things on a power play component, but it's looking at all these different elements on how they tie into, different situations that happen in a game. I like doing a lot of drills in this place on the ice where it might happen in a game. But this is an easy drill. You could set up 5 stations easily or 4 stations easily on the ice anywhere and have, a lot of players being active. The second part to the progression, and I think in any skill, no matter what age you're working with, is adding pressure. This is going to be the biggest component where you're going to start to see things that happen in drills, happen in games. And when I look at a game, anytime a player has a puck, there's someone from the other team chasing them. So working on the same skating skills, but now you have to be aware, where's the pressure coming from? Where's the defender stick? What am I trying to do with it? From a defender side, you obviously have to try and get to a position where you can get the puck back. So there's opportunities as soon as you add the stress or the pressure to teach both sides of the game at the same time, both the offensive side and the defensive side. And so in any drill that I do, I try, no matter what it is, to finish off with pressure, try to finish off with stress so that the players understand that, okay, we were able to do this drill fairly comfortably in a situation where there was no stress or pressure, but ultimately in a game, we're going to have to be able to do it that way. And that's where I'll add little components like this at the end, where if you lose the puck, the player loses it, they automatically go on defense. The player who gets the puck and turns it over, they automatically, just like in a game, they transition and go to offense. And the thing about some of these drills is I really try not to do too much instructing and let the players kind of figure it out. To me, as you progress through the different ages is where you can start to refine those things more, but I try not to limit the kids. And so again, when I'm doing drills with players, usually the very last 1 or 2 reps, I don't tell them anything. That's all, figure it out. I don't want them to finish off the drill with me telling them what to do the whole way. So I want to try and set up situations where they have to read and react, because at the end of the day, that's what the game is all about, is read and react. When we talk about skill blends, this is really sort of the skills needed to perform a drill or a play. So it could be skating, it could be puck control, it could be moves, it could be a shot. And within each of these, it's not necessarily just one skating skill or one puck control skill or one move or one type of shot. It's being able to put all of these things together in a play or a drill that's going to happen. So again, to me, the progression is really one setup. You're working on a lot of the exact same things. You're just adding something to make it a little bit more difficult. The skill blend is tying in multiple skating maneuvers, multiple puck control, multiple moves, multiple shots, and all of these things have to be put together in a sequence in order for the play to happen. So I'll spend a lot of time just working on various skating components first. And I like a butterfly pattern where the players are going down the ice. We're going inside edge. We'll work in, we'll throw in a crossover, different adaptations. So these are blending of series of skating skills together. And these players are all probably 12 years old at the time when we did it. So they're pretty good at it. They're not perfection by any means, but they're good for their age. And to me, it's blending all these different skills together. And again, I try not to spend a lot of time on just instructing. Try to spend time on, here's the purpose, here's the why we're doing it, different combinations with their feet. So that's where we talk about the skill blend, is blending those types of things in together. And ultimately, to me, the players have to be able to do this stuff without a puck before they get a puck. Now, because when we get the puck on their stick and we ask them to do some of these same things, I don't want them to be worried about what they're doing with their feet. I want that to be natural, to decide when to cross over because there's an opponent there, or when to move left or when to move right. And this is also part of the habit building of getting their eyes up, scanning the ice. Sometimes you have two hands on your stick, sometimes you have one hand on your stick. So there's all kinds of different elements, but I like to do the skating component first, and then we'll do the exact same things where we add a puck. And as you'll see, sometimes their eyes are down. The instruction we're giving them is eyes up, and you'll see the progression. And once they get the skating down, then it becomes much easier for them to handle the puck and doing the same things. They can kind of let go, they can be creative, they can determine, what do I have to do with my feet in order to get the puck into this position, different things like that. So that's sort of the progression that I like to go on. And then as we go, we'll add obstacles down the middle of the ice. We'll add coaches for pressure. We'll add coaches for stress. We'll have a player chasing, for example. So now they'll have to do these same types of things when there's a player chasing them from behind. So again, they get used to doing these skills in a game-like situation. And that's where I think the game transfer really comes in. And so there's a lot of variety of things going on here, but I just want them to get comfortable in doing the moves first. We're not even really doing this at a purpose yet, as far as where we want to implement it into a drill. It's necessarily going to try and beat a defenseman one-on-one or beat an opposition, different things like that. So this video progresses for a little bit, but as we get going, you can see here now we'll add some obstacles. As we get going, and now we have to use the combination of the skating skill, combination of the puck skill on an obstacle on a net or a defenseman, and then finish with a shot on net. And in order for this to be the most sort of interactive, but also game realistic, I think they have to have that skating skill fundamental first, the puck skill fundamental second, and then you can start working on sort of the moves component of it and finishing with a shot on net. So it's just doing a lot of similar variations, but in different drills. Repetition is important as far as the moves and different things like that, but you want to set up different scenarios all the time. So here we started off a puck steal. So for example, those are ways that we'll look at starting drills. In a game, you very rarely start with the puck on your stick. Even on a face-off, you don't have the puck on the stick. You get off the bench on a line change, you don't have the puck on the stick, you have to go get it. So if I'm looking for game transfer, I want to do a lot of things where they actually have to go get a puck first, and then the skating skill, the puck skill, the move, the shot, all those things come into play. And so again, when we just look at some application of some game clips here from some of our Team Canada players, again, the combination of puck skills, skating, sometimes it's inside edge, sometimes it's gliding, these things all become natural to older players because they're very, very comfortable in their confidence and what they're doing with the skill component. Then they can make the proper reads, different things like that happen in a game, understand when to do it, why to do it. And so none of these things happen if the players haven't had a lot of repetition at this. And again, it comes down to blending the skills, the various skating skills, the puck skills, the move, the deception, the shot, all these types of things. And so, when you look at a player like this going up the ice, there's an inside edge hold, there's inside edge sculling, there's a crossover, there's different puck moves, and all these things are what we call skill blends that a player will put together based on the situation. And so you want to set that up in the practice setting in a situation where they're gonna get that the most. And again, another one, we're talking crossovers, inside outside moves. Players have to be able to do this on demand in a split second based on what they see and what they feel in a game. So those types of plays a lot of times will make highlight reels, but the reality of it is there's a lot of components that go into it. The next part is that we kind of focus on is the continuum. And to me, the continuum is multiple players doing different things that end up in a play happening. So one player might be making a pass, another player it's a skating position, another one is receiving a pass. So there's all kinds of different skills and combination that come into play, but they're all sort of in a sequence. And when we look at it at the continuum, it's about how players sequence these skills together and then determining and making the decision on what is the skating pattern, what puck control, puck protection component do I need, when do I change direction, how do I drive a lane. So I'll just show a clip here of Sidney Crosby. If you look at the continuum, the number of different skills that happen in this sequence: picked up a loose puck, protected the puck behind the net, delayed, drove a lane, got a shot. So these are all elements in this situation that if I was to break this down and say, how do we practice this? I would actually probably break this into 4 or 5 different components and then build it back up into one full sort of skill or drill scenario at the end. So the first thing we might want to start with players on is just working on that picking up of a loose puck, deception, stick fake, turning out of the corner, left or right, all the different scenarios. And again, these are situations picking up loose pucks that happen all over the ice. In this instance, we're doing it in the against the boards. So it's how do you position yourself to make the next play after you've picked up a loose puck. And again, progression is simple: forehand fakes, backhand fakes. I'll put some pressure on, so now the player is forced to make a look over the shoulder to determine which way they're going to go next. Different things like that. The second component would be the individual component of the delay. And start simple. Players just go up the wall, delay, attack the obstacles, and basically you're working on them driving a lane. So what are they doing? The skating skills, the puck skills, forehand shot, backhand shot, and then you'll progress to what we saw in the clip with Crosby, where now there's a double delay. And so this would be the starting point of this. And then again, we'll add pressure, we'll take the obstacles away, add a coach, add different players. And depending on the age level that you're working with or the caliber that you're working with, you may have to keep the obstacles there for 2 or 3 or 4 practices in a row until they get that down. And once they get that point, now you take those obstacles away. And I think obstacles on the ice are a good way for kids, again, to get their eyes up and understand where they want to make some moves. But at some point you have to take those away because they have to be able to do it on demand depending on what the defensive player is doing. So, we see a lot of players that do really, really well in this component, where there's an obstacle, pylon, sticks, whatever you want, danglers on the ice, and they do really well. But as soon as you take those away, they really struggle when there's a live coach or a live player, because they get accustomed to doing something on a static object. And so you want to, in your progression or your continuum, take those away. So now they have to understand, do I delay because the coach told me to delay, or do I delay because this is what I need to do in order to create space and make the next play. So we always talk a lot about next play mentality. And so that's a big component of skill development, is as you go through the progression or the continuums, that you add those elements in there. The driving of the lane, so protecting of the puck when you're on your forehand or your backhand. We saw Crosby come to the middle. He had a defender on him. He lifted the defender's stick and then he took his backhand shot. So those are elements that you can build into this. But again, the key is you want to give players the components of developing confidence in the individual continuum pieces. And then ultimately you want to put it all back together. So we might start the drill with a loose puck, dump it in the corner. Player has to pick it up in the corner, skate behind the net, delay, drive the lane, double delay, drive the lane. So you can really build on that. And over time, it gives you the opportunity to build a sequence or an occurrence of something that happens in a game quite often. I don't spend a lot of time on certain things that I only see happen once every 10 games or once every 20 games. You want to try and work on things where there's going to be multiple occurrences in a game situation. That's where you're going to see your players' confidence build, and that's where you're going to see them be able to perform. Once it gets to that point, it's fun to add in, some little things that you see a Patrick Kane or a Crosby or a McDavid do once in a while, but they need to get the fundamentals down first. Once they have that, then you can open up the doors to all the other elements. So that's kind of where we look at a continuum. So I'll show a couple of examples of continuums on how we might want to do this. And here's an example of puck protection. And it doesn't matter what skill you want to work on. I think you can pick 5 points, 3 points, 4 points, and say, what are the continuums here? So if we look at puck protection, number one, the most important thing is establish body position. So, another reference there is position before possession. Number two is to actually protect the puck, manage the puck, put it in a position where the other player can't get it from you. Once you've done that, then you need to be able to extend the possession. And when we say extend possession, that means you're going to protect it so you can get yourself into a position to continually skate with the puck, take a shot, or make a pass. The fourth one is to be a threat. So in other words, you want to create more options. So once you've protected the puck, you've extended the possession, now what? Do I have to pass it? Do I take it to the net? Am I going to shoot? and then ultimately the finish. And that might be a shot by that same player, it might be a shot by someone else. But if you want to look at sort of the sequence on what you want to develop here, I think no matter what the skill, it could be, you could do the same skill on defenseman puck retrievals, on breakouts, on the forecheck. Anything you want to do is identify what are the key points. How do you work on those individually, and how do you have to develop all of those in sequence in order for something to happen? So we'll look at a scoring clip down low here, and I'll pause it at certain situations to look at. But scoring down low, when we put this together, first thing you notice, the player takes a look and sees what's going on behind him. Before the player even gets the puck, he's looking at, okay, where am I? Puck protection, extending possession, a threat, and then finally the finish. And then this will play again just to show you. So there's the look, establishing the body position. So knowing that he's going to accept pressure, where do I have to put my body and the puck? A little fake, spin away. So there's that puck protection right there. Now the extending of the possession, and the extending of the possession doesn't need to be long, 2 or 3 or 4 strides. The threat could be, I'm going to drive the net. Got 3 defenders in a position where the player could drive the net and try and tuck it in on the short side, or obviously being able to view the play and find the teammate who's open for the shot. So when you put it all together, establish the body position, protected, extended the possession, was a threat, and then ultimately a shot on goal, which resulted in a goal. So when we look at a continuum, it's sort of those sequence of plays that happen together with a player in order to make something happen. So to me, it's really important in how you want to try and sequence those, and how you take the steps to work through each of those things as separate drills or separate skills, and then how you tie them together so ultimately that play can happen in a game. Another one could be another situation when we talk about scoring down low or puck protection, is the establishing of body position first. And so a lot of players, when we talk about, when we always hear coaches saying 50-50 battles. Well, 50-50 battles actually happen all over the ice, every shift, multiple times in a game. So that's where I referred to earlier, is work on situations where there's multiple occurrences. And so I think a job as a coach in these situations is to turn your player from a 50-50 battle position into an advantage where they can get 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. So teach them how to create the advantage, whether they're bigger, smaller, slower, faster, doesn't matter what it is, but how do I help to give my players the best advantage? And that is part of the skill in the whole continuum. I saw a stat the other day, Jonathan Marchessault from the Vegas Golden Knights, his one-on-one battle percentage is over 80%, which is off the charts. If your average NHL player is about 55% in their one-on-one battles on whether they come out with the puck, and he's at over 80, that's outstanding. And even with kids that are 9 or 10 years old, I work on this stuff where I'm always talking about establish body position first. It doesn't matter if the other player is bigger, doesn't matter if the other player is faster. If you get your body in the way first, you're going to give yourself a better chance to win that loose puck. So an example on this, if we just look at establishing body position. So the first step for this player will be into the other player's lane. Whether you're cutting the hands or that your body's going through the player's hands, it's establishing the body position first before you worry about the puck. And so there's just some examples of little drills that we would do where we're working on those types of things to establish that body position and where to place the puck in puck protection. And again, in some cases, it's going to be creating repetition, working on singular components of it, of getting the puck, extending the possession, becoming a threat, what you're going to do with it. And these are all things that end up being put together in a way where a play will happen in a game. And so, again, I think it doesn't necessarily matter what the play is. It's what are you teaching your players to do to help to manipulate the situation so they have an advantage. We saw Kucherov there with just a little blade flash, just something different, something that, creative players can do in order to help get that shot on net, add a little bit of deception, a little bit of a fake, different things like that. So again, in the continuum, when we look at, I probably have 40 continuums on all different plays that happen. So whether it's defensemen shooting from the blue line, puck retrievals, You know, a lot of defensive components too, whether it's you know, the player on the defensive side, how do they get the puck back? I look at what are all the components that happen in this play that the players need to know, and we'll break them down right into individual components. Add the second one, build the third one. Sometimes you get stuck on the third progression. You have to stay there for a while until the players get it, and then you move on. There's no sort of, you know, one answer, one simple answer to everything. But I think if you work through the process, the players will learn a lot and they'll understand that process as well on what you're trying to do and how it applies to the game. A lot of you have probably seen this Crosby play behind the net from a few years ago. The number of different skills that happen in this play is phenomenal. And in any one of those things breaks down, the play probably doesn't happen. So we look at it, puck protection, heel to heel again, puck protection, one hand off the stick, puck into the skates, tight turn, heel to heel again, and finally ends up in the puck getting to the point. So when we look at that type of play, there's a lot of different elements there. And so again, I think you want to go back and teach it from a very simple standpoint. So we'll start off like this. Simple one player, just work on, and again, I don't give them a lot of rules. I'll say, I want you to work on heel to heel, going behind the net, try different things, coming out with a shot. Sometimes, you know, you may progress where you're passing to the point man, all kinds of different things. Give the players confidence first. And then my next step would be I'll add a coach for some passive pressure. And then we'll add a player and turn it into a live one-on-one situation. But the key thing in a situation like this is making sure that the players have some confidence to do the move or perform the skills that you're looking for without, number one, the threat of losing the puck, without being afraid to make a mistake, without the threat of worrying about falling down. Once they get that, they become so much more comfortable in a game-like situation because they feel like they've done it before. Now you can add more of that sort of read and react type of thing. Next thing I want to cover is where we look at taking a clip that happens in a game and really breaking it down to all of the components. So we call this a chain of events. And when we look at a chain of events, it's a play that happens in the game. And then depending on, you can have a chain of events on the defensive side, you can have a chain of events on the offensive side. So if we start with the chain of events on the offensive side, it might start when your team gets the puck. So there's going to be puck retrieval, passing, receiving. What is the skating pattern that the player makes? Are there moves and deception involved? Puck protection, scoring chance. And as I show this next clip, we'll play it a couple of times. I think it'll give you a good sense of what we're talking about here. But at any point in a game, if one of these links in this chain of events breaks down, the scoring chance probably doesn't happen or the goal doesn't happen. So whether it's starting from the pass that doesn't hit the player's tape, if it's a pass that isn't received well, if the player doesn't take the right skating pattern, if they're not deceptive, if they don't protect the puck properly, and they probably don't get the scoring chance. So we look at the chain of events as all the things that need to happen in order for this play to occur. And if you wanted to get real technical about it, as soon as you lose a puck, now that starts a new chain of events, and the chain of events is what do you have to do to get the puck back? And you know, even if it's your chain of events, if you're with older players and one of your strategies is, okay, in this situation, we're going to dump the puck in the corner. After that dump in, I would start a new chain of events with how do we get it back? And so you can develop all these little chains of events that happens in a game that will help you to look at how you want to develop it. So here's a play. I'll play the whole sequence first. Bo Horvat from the Canucks against the Oilers last year. Probably saw it. At first glance, lots of different components here that are important. Lots of things that happen. But if you want to break these down, there's some things that are important here. So when I looked at the first thing right here with that defenseman who went back to retrieve the puck, one of the most important components that happens in this whole play is that the defenseman passed the puck when he was supposed to, not when he had to. We see a lot of young defensemen get the puck, they hang on to it too long, and the only reason they get rid of it is because they had to. But in this situation, in this chain of events, the fact that that defenseman passed the puck when he was supposed to, in other words, passed the puck at a time when his forward could actually get it, that was the first component. The second component that's really important here, and I'll just rewind it a bit, is if we look at the pattern that Horvat is skating is really important. in a lot of our drills, especially when players don't have the puck, if he would have just stayed along the wall and skated up the wall, that would have been very easy for Nugent Hopkins there to angle him, set his angle, and probably get the puck at about the red line. The fact that that Horvat's skating pattern without the puck took him into the middle, forced Nugent Hopkins to hold that middle lane. And then ultimately, when he did get the puck, he was able to reach it, receive it in stride, and skate away from Nugent Hopkins and not have to worry about that defender getting the puck from him in that situation. So that was a key component in this chain of events, is the skating pattern that he took in order to receive the pass and then do something with it afterwards. The fake at the blue line, the one crossover, got the defenseman Benning to bite. And he just saw a slow motion there. He created about 10 feet of space, driving the net, enabled him to get the puck there. So, you know, you could argue a little bit lucky on how the puck bounced off the goalie and in, but he did everything right. So again, here's the pattern: into the middle, receives the puck in motion, creates that separation from the opposition. The one fake at the blue line, the crossover, he got Benning to stack his skates here. Next thing you know, his stick is up in the air and it's a windshield wiper. There's no way he's going to do anything with it. He's got a weak stick, and Horvat has the ability to go through. So when we look at that whole sequence, I would break that down and say there's multiple components that I would want to work on in order for that whole play to happen. And it involves multiple players. So step one, the retrieval, player coming around the net, eyes up, little deception, eyes up, ready to make the next play. Do I skate it? Do I pass it? That might be the very first thing that you want to work on. And again, those are important components in that chain, so that your defensemen know what they're going to do when they get the puck. Before they pick it up, are they going to wheel? Are they going to quick up? Whatever they're going to do, but they have their eyes up, ready to make the play. Okay? And then make the pass. And multiple, you know, repetitions on this type of stuff. So a fake, going behind the net, stop, make a pass. There you see, pass missed the tape. No problem. We're going to go back and do it again. So at any one of these points, there's nothing wrong with going back and making sure that the players are doing it right, because this is one of the most important components from going defense on offense. So a little stick fake, stop. Now he looks one way, passes the other way. So these are all the little elements that you can build into this. So you're selling fakes, your deception. Again, looks one way, makes a backhand pass the other way. So these are all the elements that you can build in on just this one component of a breakout. And I think they're important to build on all types of these things. So now you're giving your players as many possible tools as you can: shoulder check, fake, wheel, pass without looking at that player. So these are all the elements in those types of things that you want to try and cover. The next is that skating pattern. And so here we got one of our skills coaches just working on the skating pattern. We don't even have a puck. We're just having them to envision receiving a puck so they can do this in full stride. And we'll just work on a simple component of it where you're going to get that puck in full stride. The skating pattern is from the boards to the middle, receive the puck in full stride, and just enter the zone. So that's the simple component. Work on all the elements of that that's important. So stick on the ice, stick out in front of the feet so you can accept that puck, cushion it, don't have to stick handle once you get it, eyes up immediately as you're going into those. So that's the second component there, is being able to pick up that pass on the fly, being able to get your head up right away, make the next play. The next component is the move at the blue line. So again, we saw some of this with the younger players, is just working on that one crossover and moving the puck from the forehand to the backhand. So we'll work on this component multiple times with players, and whether you do it in the warm-up or you start a new drill with a butterfly sequence in the middle of practice, whatever you want to do, it's easy to go back and work on those things. But you could have done those first three links in that sequence, and if the player can't be deceptive at the blue line, that puck will probably get knocked off their stick. They'll skate themselves into the corner, or they'll end up losing the puck. So it's important to put an emphasis on each of these components so that they can learn how to do this on the fly, split decision. They don't have to think about it. And again, the skating component of that one crossover is huge. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the puck. So in a progressive standpoint, we worked on this type of a play with our defensemen on puck retrievals, the forwards on the skating pattern. What are the deception or the moves options you have at the blue line in order to attack that defenseman or the defender, and ultimately being able to use this move at a blue line to get yourself into a position to be a threat. You're extending your possession, you're maintaining the opportunity to make something happen yourself or make a play using a teammate. So all of these different skills have to be done in isolation if you really want to get to a point where the players can master it. The last component is the net drive. So working on driving forehand, backhand, where you're putting the puck under the defender's stick and taking it to the net. So we'll start off very passive pressure by the coach, give the players confidence, understand where do I have to place that puck in order for me to get it back, to get a shot on net. And these are all simple drills in each of their components. But if you really want to see players have success when you put this all together, I really believe you have to spend the time on this. And then in reality, you know, depending on what age level you're working at, this could be one entire practice. You could start down the middle of the ice in the butterfly pattern, working on the skating skills, working on the puck skills that are required. Then you can split your players and have your defensemen working on just puck retrievals, and your forwards can be just working on this component of driving the net, you know, in various puck drive or net drive patterns. And then you can bring them together where you're going to combine it, and you'll have, you know, the defenseman retrieve a puck, make it a pass to the forward, attack the other lane or the other end, sorry, and then, you know, and then put a defender in play. And before you know it, in one practice session, you could have covered all of these different things that will get your players on the path to being able to do this in a game. So that's kind of where we look at a chain of events and look at it from the standpoint of any one of these things breaks down. So the defenseman doesn't make the pass at the right time, that chain of events probably doesn't happen. If the player doesn't have the proper skating pattern and be able to receive that puck in motion, that chain of events is going to break. If they don't have the ability to create that move and deception to get some space at the blue line, they don't have a chance to drive the net and ultimately get a shot on goal. And so when I look at NHL games or sequences now, that's the thing I'm always looking for is what is the chain of events? What pieces of the game happened in order for this play to take place? And you can do it from an offensive side and a defensive side. And 9 times out of 10, the offensive side is a lot more interesting. It's where you see the highlight of the night. But you can also take that opportunity once you've watched it from the offensive side a few times, play it again and look and see what did the defensive players do or not do in order for this play to happen. So it'll really give you a different insight into the game. So again, we'll look at, you know, adding moves, different things like that. I think moves and deception is where, you know, we talked about, you know, I think you need to do this in open ice. I think you need to do it where you have some obstacles on the ice. I think you need to do this type of stuff in a situation where you have a coach or you have live players there. They're all important, and not that one is more important than the other, but at some point you have to be able to do these on demand based on the read, based on the position of the game, where the puck is, where you are on the ice. So we want to give players that confidence in their skill so that they can ultimately be able to do this stuff in a game. And so, you know, again, we just look at situations where you can use opportunities to develop a whole variety of skill blends, continuums, type moves to get players to that level. And again, I'm a big believer that at some point you need to take these obstacles away so that players are doing it because it's the right read based on what they see from the opposition and not necessarily just because there's something on the ice. And to me, the best skills guys in the world have the ability to do that is work on this stuff in a repetitive fashion. So the kids are getting lots of repetition. Then you want to add the purpose to it. Where on the ice would you do this? How would you use it? What's the timing? What's your thought process for determining on what to do? And then ultimately you turn these into live situations. So just an example there. Another one when we look at puck protection, for example, is starting off simple, starting off in a situation where players get comfortable with it, multiple pucks, multiple players, tight spaces, all these types of things. And you know, again, from a puck protection standpoint, we saw Crosby whack the defender's stick in that one play when he was driving to the net. So I like to work on all these little things. Start easy, start stationary, work in a small area. Again, we talk about body position here, putting your body position, managing the puck, and then you can advance it to other scenarios. But a lot of these things all come down to the different components. So we look at puck protection. Here's where we talked about pressure from behind, understanding where to put the puck, how to manage it based on what you're seeing. You want to make it really difficult, you add a player in front and a player in behind. That's typically what you're going to see in a game. Tracking now, back checking is such an important part. So how do you build those components into puck protection so players can really learn it? And again, depending on the level you're at, the ability, you'll be able to progress through some of this stuff quicker. Some of it's going to take you a longer period of time. And don't worry about the time. Spend the time to try and do it right and make sure that the players get an understanding. Then you will see a far greater sort of ability to see that game transfer happen. Another thing, looking at loose pucks, I love starting drills this way now. So the first step is the skating skill. How do I get body position on that player first? Take the lane. You see here is obviously a smaller player and an older player. Worked on retrieving loose pucks. Like I said, I've really transformed a lot of the things I do in practice in the last few years on this type of concept, where start from a face-off alignment. There's 40, 50, 60 face-offs in the game. So if you want your players to be able to transfer it, have them line up with, as they would if they're a left winger, a center, or a right winger, and then you throw a loose puck because the puck can go anywhere off the face-off. Loose pucks up the wall. Instead of, you know, traditionally we always used to have a lot of times where pucks are in the corners, players start out of the corner with the puck all the time in the drill, and yes, it works well, but the reality of it is it doesn't happen in games. Even when we're doing some of our lane skating or things down the middle, simple things like we saw there, you know, skate one way, have to change direction to get the puck. Lots of little situations where the drills start off with a race or a competition, where they got to race to get a puck, and then there's a second puck. These things all emulate concepts that happen in games all over the place, where you know, they have to go get a loose puck. And I think the more you work on that stuff in practice, the more you're going to see it. I really saw it with my U11 team last year when we did a ton of this stuff at the start of the year. We started every drill where they never had a puck on their stick. They always had to go get it. It becomes habit for them to get in the lane of the other player. It becomes habit for them to take a look over the shoulder. It becomes a habit for them to put the skating fake or the stick fake in. And yeah, our team game at the start of the year wasn't good, but the fact that we worked on all these sort of fundamental or these smaller level skills for the first 2 months before we got into anything else, when we actually had all these things under control and our players were able to do it, teams that were beating us pretty bad in the first half of the year, we were beating them equally as bad in the second half because of all the little things, and we were able to put them together. So I know sometimes it can be hard to not worry about the score or not worry about the game result, but I think if you put some of these things into your plan and you actually work on them, you will see over time how much your players will advance, and you'll start to see the success. So, you know, again, when it comes to these types of things, it's important to look at the progression. What can your players do and what can't they do? From there, how am I going to work on it? Am I going to work on sort of the drill from the whole part, or am I going to try the drill as all the pieces put together, see how it works, and then break it down into the individual components? How do we tie that into a concept like a continuum or a chain of events where we need multiple players and multiple things to happen in the right sequence in order for us to make a play or to get a scoring chance or ultimately score a goal? So I think if you start to think about how you sequence your drills, what you're doing in drills, you'll be able to come up with a whole bunch of sequences, chain of events on your own, and how to develop them. And the other thing is, I encourage people to try things. A lot of times things look good on paper. You get out on the rink, it didn't work as well as I thought. That's okay. You know, not everything has to work perfect. The kids don't have to be doing the drills perfect at the start, but what you want to see is signs of improvement where they're understanding what your instruction is, that they actually start to do it in the drills repeatedly. When you can see kids start to do things in drills multiple times, multiple reps in a row, Now I think you're going to be in a position where you'll start to see those things potentially happen in a game. Some players will do it in practice and they'll do it the very next game without any delay. Other players, it might take 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, an entire year. But to me, when you start to see them do this in practice under repetition and it's a repeatable component, you know the time is coming where they're going to be able to see it in a game. So, again, puck steals is one that's important, a hugely important component. But starting simple, stick lift, get comfortable with what you're trying to do, and then you can progress to make getting a little bit more challenging. But the keys to me to good offense are the players who can play good defense. The better they are at being able to get pucks back, the better they are at going to be able to get on offense in a game. So I even start a lot of my offensive drills with this type of thing: a puck steal. Steal the puck from an opponent, then start your drill, because that's what's going to happen in a game. And build on all these little components to it. And a lot of it is trial and error. You're working on things, try it, and then you get into a more of a game situation, steal the puck, and just like in a game, you transition to offense. Try different patterns where you're stealing a puck from a coach, now you transition and go right on offense. Start your drill where you have to lift a stick of a coach. If you have the assistant coaches who like to lean on the boards and not be too active, this is a great little way to get them more involved in the drill. Instead of just starting with a puck, again, have the coach be the person that they have to steal the puck with, and then turn around and go. So I think you can be creative with a lot of this stuff on how you want to do it. Again, cutting of the hands there, body position, tap the puck to a position. Sometimes you're going to steal it off the boards. You can be really creative on how you want to start all these things. But these are all elements that I think you can tie into progressions, skill blends, continuums, and ultimately a chain of events. So that's sort of it from the presentation side. Hopefully the video wasn't too lagging there for everybody, Joel, but I know one of the questions that came through was some of the effective ways to practice and ensure skill transfer, or the best ways to track or quantify it. So number one for me for skill transfer is I like to try and practice drills in the area of ice that are frequently going to occur in the game. That gives players a situation where they've done it in practice and you've repeated it in practice. When that situation happens in a game, there's some familiarity to where they picked up the puck, where they received the pass, what they're going to do, probably similar to where an opponent would be as a coach or another player in practice would be. I think, again, putting that emphasis on the key components. So, it might start off with the body position in order to steal a puck, a shoulder check. What's the skating pattern I'm going to take? Putting the key emphasis on those things, and don't necessarily worry about the exact pattern or the exact level of execution. Look for more of an understanding that they're getting what you're trying to say, and don't worry as much about the technical components, if you will, but look at the concepts. Number three, I think if you start the drills in the same manner that a play would happen in a game. So again, I do a lot of drills from a face-off dot, whether it's neutral zone, end zones, wherever, whether it's a puck going back to a defenseman and they have to go D to D and up, or a puck off the face-off dot that goes into the corner and the defenseman has to pick it up and start a break-off off of that, or a breakout off of that on the offensive side. For players where the puck goes, how do you go get it? What's your first step to get a loose puck? Again, is it body position? So try and start your drills in the way that it would happen in a game. I think it's important to add stress to your drills in practice. Add that coach pressure, add the player pressure, add some sort of a competition where they actually have to learn to not only just to compete. It's one thing to get players to work hard, but it's getting them to work smart and being able to adapt. If there's no pressure in the drills in practice, they're going to have an adverse reaction to the pressure in a game, whether the player comes on their forehand side or their backhand side. So the more you can add those types of things in practices, you'll see it go. I think repetition. Every sort of high-level skills coach that we talk to, we'll ask them a question: can you teach hockey sense or hockey IQ? And the answer is always yes. And the number one thing that comes down to is if the players have confidence in their skill ability, then the hockey sense or the IQ can take over at some point. And so, again, it's not something that's necessarily going to happen overnight. And again, as I mentioned, some of those first couple of clips, I think you can develop hockey sense and IQ probably as much by not always telling kids what to do, but allowing them to figure it out. It's okay if they turn left or they turn right, because in a game they're going to have to make that decision. So the less we tell kids what to do, and the more we tell them the why and the how, the more we're actually going to unlock their hockey sense or be less inhibiting with that type of a component. Quantify the for skills in games. It's easy as a coach, again, on a bench, you get caught up sometimes watching the game, but I really try to watch for evidence of players doing things in the game that I know we just worked on in practice. If we worked on something in practice and in games, you just continually see players not doing it, then you know there's a disconnect. But if you see them starting to get position before possession, taking a look over the shoulder, the skating pattern, different things like that, if you can really watch for those evidences of things you've taught in practice and you start to see them in games, then there's one way to quantify. Number two, I try to reward players that are implementing what we worked on in practice. So whether it's verbally saying, "Hey, great job, we worked on that in practice last day and you put it in the game, that was excellent," or vice versa. Sometimes, "Hey, you remember this play in a game that you did really well? Well, here's a great opportunity to do this in the drill." Ask the players questions. A lot of times on the bench during games, I'm not telling them something. When they come off the shift, off the ice, I'm asking them a question. I'm like, what were you thinking on that play there? And then try and get them to the point where, don't worry, there's no bad answer here. I just want to try and figure out what you were thinking, so that that can help you as a coach determine what we're doing. And sometimes the player gives you a really good answer. Sometimes they'll say, I don't even know, I just did it. But questions as a coach will give you a lot of opportunity to gain information of a player's understanding. And again, I like to reference a lot of practice things into my games and vice versa, because again, I really, even with the younger players, the 10 or 11-year-olds, we're really talking about, we're working on this in practice because of this situation in a game, or because I want you to try and have success in a game. And then, as we go up the ladder and working with University of Calgary level players, a lot of times it's the same thing. Well, the question might be a little bit different. It'll be, we're working on this drill. How do you feel this will work for you? Do you think this concept of, whatever it is we're teaching will work for you in your situation? And they'll like, yeah, I feel like this will work for me. They're like, yeah, I'm not sure this will. I think I need to do something different. So you can really get that dialogue going back and forth, because as a coach, you're going to learn as much from your players and asking questions as you probably learn more actually than you just telling them what to do all the time. Yes, there's certain things we want to accomplish from, like I said, compete levels and work ethic and how these things tie into your overall team game. But at the end of the day, as a coach, we're in the position of developing players so that they can ultimately have success in games, and they, number two, that they they have success, they have the opportunity to go on to the next level. But the most important thing is that they just keep playing the game and that they continue having fun and they see themselves getting better. If that's the case, a lot of these other things will just fall into place. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that, number one, it's a good experience for the kids, that when they come to practice, they know that it's okay for them to make a mistake. It's okay if they lose the puck, that we're not going to be doing the exact same drill day after day after day, but we're going to be working on a lot of the same skills, but in some different drills. They know that there's going to be that element where they're going to have to, work against a coach or work against another player. So try to build in some of those things so the players have a sense of what practice is going to be like. But I really try to make sure that we offer them opportunities to make decisions, ask a lot of questions, get an understanding of where they're at. And that's kind of how I like to build. So even though I'll have sort of a yearly plan and a monthly plan, these are the skills that I want to cover in October, and then even down to the week, and say these are things. I try not to put everything into such a structured format that it's like, these are my 6 drills today, these are my 6 drills tomorrow, these are my 6 drills the next day. To have a plan and a guideline, but everything is going to be based on sort of where you view your players at. What can they do? What can't they do? what can we progress a little more quickly through, what do we have to regress, make it easier, spend more time on. And so there's, as much as there is planning and a bit of a science to it, there's also an awful lot of being able to read where your players are at and make adjustments on the go based on what they've done. So I will typically try and put my practices together in sort of a block of 4 or 5 and say, these are the concepts that I want to work on over these next 4 practices. And at the end of that, I'll say, what can we move on from, or what do we have to keep doing? And sometimes they're like, wow, we got to do all this some more because they're not quite there yet. Or no, we can move on. We're good. And then obviously you use some game evaluation in there as well to see, are these things starting to show up in games? Can we use, different components and advance things or regress them based on what we're doing? So it's really being observant of everything around you, from a game environment to a practice environment, talking to the other coaches, asking players questions. All these things come into play, but ultimately, your goal as a coach, to me, the practice is where your work comes in, and to me, the game is where the players' work comes in, where you get to see where they're able to implement what you've touched on in practice and so forth. So, Joel, happy to take any other questions if any came through.
Yeah, we'll have, if anybody has any questions, you could just fire them into the group chat. We can go from there. I had one, and when you have all these different drill starts, whether it be a retrieval, a pass, a lane race, or a steal, do you ever have them so it's they naturally know how to start without you telling them? Like, do they just do it on their own at that younger U11 age? Like, have you got to a point with them there where they just know to start drills with one of those particular skills?
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to sort of condition them, because it's, for a lot of these kids, it's new for them too, right? Like they've kind of been conditioned, even though the first 3 or 4 years of hockey, about how they're going to start it. So there's also that opportunity to, depending on where the puck goes, if the puck goes forward, you make sure you'll use keywords like, hey, quick start, quick feet. If the puck goes to the side, it's going to be, they're going to have to probably do a crossover start to the left or to the right. Or if the puck goes behind them, they're going to have to pivot. So there's elements in all those things that you can build in. And so I like to kind of keep them off guard a little bit. One time the puck will go forward, sometimes it goes left, sometimes it goes right. In a lot of the drills where they start off with a puck steal or there's a chaser, I make them continuous drills. So the player who gets the puck stolen from them then becomes the next player who's going to steal the puck. So it's this kind of a rotation. So the first player, he's going to steal the puck. He ends up with a shot on net, goes to the back of the line or wherever his turn is. But the second player who got the puck stolen from him, I'll have them chase that player for part of the drill, and then they release, and then they come back in. Now they got to steal the puck from the next player. So it doesn't take very long for young kids to figure out sort of the rotation on how we're going to do it. A lot of times it does come into some planning with your assistant coaches on, we're going to start the drill here, but I need the pucks in this location, or I need you to be with the puck here, and you're going to start the drill with, setting the puck over here, so the players have to go get it. It's funny, if you don't explain that right, wherever you put the pucks, the kids automatically just navigate. They just decide that's where the drill is going to start. So sometimes you have to tell them, no, we're not starting the drill there. You're actually starting here. You have to go get the puck first. But it doesn't take too long. Kids are smart. They figure that stuff out.
I've got one from Kyle here. Earlier in the presentation, you mentioned that obstacles get their eyes up. I have found this to be the opposite. Can you explain? As well, I'm curious why use obstacles at all when you can use a player instead, with varying levels of movement and pressure to still allow high reps, and plus providing the correct obstacle they will see in a game.
Yeah, I find if you have a series of obstacles, they'll be able to use peripheral vision. Even sometimes if their head is down a bit, their eyes can still be up, but they'll see something in front of them that they know there's a move coming up. And so just like in a game, if all of a sudden there's a player there, whether the player is moving or whether it's playing stationary, I think the obstacle will get them thinking about the next move, because they automatically think that there's something there. But to that same point, at a certain point, you have to take those away, and I'll use a player or I'll use a coach. I find initially, especially with younger players, there's another player or a coach there, the players kind of forget about technique sometime, and they just do whatever they can to get around the coach. And so I like to have sort of that path of obstacle, get them confident, and being able to repeat that move several times. And once they get to the point where you can see that they can actually perform the move multiple times on a static object, then okay, now I'm going to do this as a player or a coach. And again, the obstacles might be there for one or two drills or one or two practices, and then they're away. It's not like I keep the obstacle there for 3 months in a row, and then we finally get to the coach. So you have to read that a little bit. So I think the obstacles or multiple obstacles ensure that the player knows there's something else coming up. So again, it's trying to get them in that next play mentality. So I like doing that. And then ultimately I take the obstacle away so that, they can do it in more of a game-like situation. And they do the move because it's the read or what's called for. It's not just because there's an obstacle there.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any questions they want to submit in the group chat? Kyle's on fire here with questions. So how do you balance your skill teaching when you have large skill differences amongst your players?
That's a good question. I find it, if you look at sort of big picture, let's take the Edmonton Oilers, for example. There's a fairly big skill gap on an NHL team, from your top 3 or 4 skilled guys to your bottom 4 or 5 skilled guys too. Even though they can all play, they can all skate, they can all do that. There's a fairly significant skill difference. And so with younger players, I try to put the kids in groups of similar skill, but I make sure they all work on the same thing. And so I don't want the players to think that, well, these guys are maybe the better players on the team, they're getting something special. They're not. I try to put the kids in situations in practice where they're going to have the most success. So, and the other thing is I'll do is, if I'm doing stations in practice, I'll try to put the kids in the station in first where they're the weakest at. So I have players who really need to work on certain skating things. I will put them in that skating station first, and I'll run that station longer than the other ones. And maybe my second group of players will go in the second station. Maybe that's a passing and receiving one. And if they need the most work, we put them there so that they spend more time at the station where they need the most amount of work. So again, it's always trying to sort of adapt your practice setting to make sure that everybody's always working on everything. But if there's an emphasis at the same point, I tell the parents at the start of the year, like, these younger players, obviously they need to work on everything. But if there's some things that they need to work on more than others, like, we will spend more time on that with some of them, and not to pull them out and embarrass kids or anything like that. But it's just, if we need to spend more time on it, we need to spend more time on it. And so I think if you're honest with the parents at the start of the year and you tell them what you're doing and why you're doing, I think they buy in. So they understand that it's really for their own players' good. And then, at the same point, it's about making sure that they can develop at a pace where they can. And sometimes, even if I'm doing 3 stations on the ice and they're all the same, one station, we might have that coach jump in there and add pressure sooner because that group of players can handle it. Whereas the other ones, there is no pressure from a coach. They need more repetition on it first. So I think you have to be ready to really adapt for the different levels in skill. You're obviously going to have some kids that are better skaters, some are better with the puck, some can shoot better than others. But if your plan is really development and try and do the best for every single player, no matter where their strength or weaknesses, I think there's ways you can do that and not make the player feel like they're being singled out for any one reason.
Thanks, Corey. I had a good one from Derek, just in regards to small area games and skill sessions, and when and if you use them and how you might use them to develop skills as well.
Yeah, I love all kinds of small area games. I think there's lots of elements of those that you can utilize. Sometimes I'll do them at the end of practice. Sometimes I'll start practice with some sort of a small area game. Sometimes I'll throw it into the middle. Sometimes it's based off on a read. sometimes you get to practice and you can tell that, the kids just aren't into it today. So I'll throw one in there and try and get the intensity level up or the compete level up a little bit. A lot of the small area games, I will put in little rules if there's something I'm trying to work on, where we'll tell them, once you receive a pass, you have to take at least 3 strides before you can pass the puck again. Or, if you retrieve something on the backhand, every time you receive a puck on the backhand, you have to perform an escape move. Try and add skill elements to the small area game. Sometimes I'll put rules in where once you receive the puck, you have to pass it within 5 seconds. Just any kind of thing like that to try and get players to do it. And conversely, I'll tell them, when you get the puck, I just want you to keep possession as long as you can, depending on what the game is. So kind of that extending possession play that we talked about from games. So I think the small area games are good. Again, I think they're better if they have a purpose. And again, I try and do my small area games in the area on the ice where that would typically happen. But sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. But the games are great for adding some intensity. They're great for adding that stress or adding that pressure. They're great for making kids think, to read and react. And in a lot of cases, they're fun. As soon as you add a race or something to it, the intensity level goes up and that. And it's also a good opportunity in reality to see how would players probably react to this situation in a game, because they're probably going to be fairly similar. A small area game where you got to race into the corner, battle for a puck is what they would do in a game. So I love them. I think there's a place for it. Lots of different elements to it for sure.
Kyle had another one, and I had something really similar too, just in regards to video for as a practice or a skill session. I think we so often use video just for systematic team game review, but what are your philosophies or uses with video, and how do you maybe start a practice or have it in a practice to help those kids develop those skills, or maybe even refine them after practice as well?
Yeah, I think with younger players, you can show them game clips for entertainment. So we have I have a little YouTube channel set up where I just have like U11 game clips, have the links for the parents and the players, and say, hey, do you guys check out these game clips last night? And I don't really tell them anything else, any other instruction. I try to film certain things in practice with whether it's assistant coach, or I'll bring out a phone or a tablet, and we'll try and film certain drills. Not all of them, but some of them we want to try and film, because we think there's going to be an advantage to, once it's done, or after practice or whatever, show players. I don't want to spend a lot of time with young players on video type things. We actually use in our, depending on which rink I'm at, I have an opportunity to use a TV screen that is mounted behind the glass, and so we can display video on there. And so the Hockey Canada Network app is one that a lot of times when I send out the practices that we put together to my assistant coaches, I send it to all the parents and all the players on the team too. And the instruction is for the coaches is saying, hey, Joe, can you run drill 3? Bill, you're going to run, station 2 in this one. But I send it to the parents and say, look, if you're driving to the rink and you want to show your kids, hey, here's some of the drills we're doing in practice today, go ahead and do that. So at least they can look at it and they get sort of a sense of some of the things that we're going to try and do. It's challenging in a lot of cases in minor hockey, depending on when practices are, it's kind of all over the map, is when parents can get kids to the rink. They can't get them there necessarily half an hour ahead, so we can show some things, but sometimes we'll do that. If we have a chance and the players are all there ahead of time, we'll have some videos keyed up that we want to show them and say, hey, check this out. This is something we're going to work on in practice today. So you try to be flexible with it. I like filming. I don't film obviously every practice, but a lot of times we just set up a GoPro or a tablet on a stand, or get one of the parents to just man it and say, hey, can you just throw it out there? And a lot of times as coaches, we'll go through once a week and kind of review some things like, hey, look in this drill, like they didn't really get it. Here's what we're seeing they're doing wrong. Especially with younger players where we do a lot of stations. You don't, as a head coach or whatever, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to get to every station and spend as much time there. So a lot of times we can use that to help teach the coaches as well, as far as what they want to do. With older players, if you have the opportunity to film your practices, I think it's huge. Again, a lot of times as a coach, we spend more time worrying about the flow of the drill or the pattern of the drill. And we're not maybe looking at all those little skill components that we saw like in the chain of events clips. And that's an opportunity to show players like, hey, you skated up and down the ice twice here. You worked really hard, but there was no deception. The skating pattern wasn't conducive to you getting a better scoring chance or things like that. So we try to do that with our university team a lot. Again, I know that the players don't want to spend a ton of time watching video, but if we can do it and just highlight some of those things, like saying you did this, this, and this really well, here's something to consider in this area. So I think it's beneficial for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? No, I think we're good. So, well, thanks very much for joining us, and that's some great information. I think just really the progressions and continuums and chains of events is something that we all as coaches are working to implement into our practices. And thanks for taking the time to chat with us. We will we've recorded the presentation, and obviously Corey will make it available to everybody else too. We will post it on our YouTube, but thanks again, Corey, for coming in and chatting with the coaches, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. And like I say, I'll make sure I'll get the presentation to you if anyone needs the videos out of there. And again, my biggest sort of thing to hope everyone takes away from is just, try and provoke some different thoughts on how you sequence your drills together, what you look for in the skills within the drills, and how you can apply it to a game situation. And I think ultimately as a coach, if you see your players performing things in games that they do in practice, that to me is success. So again, just thanks everybody for taking some time out of your evening, and Joel, thanks for organizing these. And I know they're popular with everybody, so it's a great tool to provide some opportunities for coaches to pick and pull some things out of here and how they think it might be able to tie into what they're doing. So
awesome. Okay, thanks all the coaches, and Corey, thanks again for joining us. Everybody have a good week.